All right, what's up, guys? Um, Today I'm going to be doing a live Q&A, answer any questions you have about game. It's basically an opportunity to get free coaching, which normally is something that costs hundreds of dollars. So definitely take advantage of this if you're able to make it to the stream. I do want to make a couple important announcements. Number one is that I'm not going to be doing boot camps for a while. I'm taking a break. I'm basically going into monk mode, as the red pill calls it, where I'm focusing on other things because that takes a lot of energy. I'm traveling on a weekly basis to do boot camps, and it's something that has burnt me out on an emotional level. So I'm going to be focusing on, on things like losing weight, on things like building good habits like meditating, reading more, wasting less time, because I just reached a point of burnout where I was, basically slowly starting to go on a downward spiral. So I'm going into monk mode to change that, which means I'm not going to be doing boot camps for a while. Now, I will still be doing live photo shoots in Phoenix, Arizona. That's something that I haven't finished setting up yet, but that's something I will be doing in the near future. So if you're interested in that, make sure to stay tuned. And in the meantime, while I'm not doing boot camps, and by the way, if you already signed up for a boot camp, I'm still doing that boot camp, but there's only a couple, and I'm not going to be letting in new clients, right? Maybe one or two to fill out one of the programs that's already there, but I'm not here to market it because it's just going to fill itself out. So, lastly, is I highly recommend that you join my free mastermind group. That is where I'm going to be most active, and it is 100% free. It is somewhere where you will be able to be in a community where you are surrounded by other people who are having successes, right? You're going to see guys ending dry spells, guys losing their virginity, guys, getting their first date. Maybe it's just doing their first approach. And then a few months later, you see them go from doing their first approach, which took them years. And then you see, them, get laid or find a girlfriend or whatever it is. So you're surrounded by other people who are taking action and leveling up. And it's a great way to get out of the sidelines, to stop being someone who's just consuming content, waiting for the moment to strike, to start taking action, and to be someone who is actively participating, who's actively a part of, the movement of pickup, if you will. So I highly recommend joining it. It's also, I'm building a new feature that I've already added, and it's going to grow, which is a wingman finder, a map where you can see anyone who's in your city or in a nearby city and easily hit them up to meet them in real life, to go out to approach women. And I mention this because, the first time I was able to approach was thanks to finding a wingman. I tried from the age of 16 to 21 a handful of times, and I failed so massively, or I would have a panic attack, or it would just go horribly when I tried to go out and approach women. It would go so badly that what I ultimately did is I would give up for a month or a year because I just hated the experience of trying to approach women so much. And eventually, when I was 21, I was in line and I heard the guy in front of me using terminology from the mystery method, right? So, or the game. And I said, "Hey, are you here to spit game?" And he said, "Yeah, mate." That's my great British accent. Let's go hunt some birds, or whatever the fuck he said. And being around this guy who was very confident, this guy who was just going out sober, approaching every girl, getting numbers, having success, I felt like a total bitch compared to him. But when he pushed me to approach, I kind of felt like I had no way out, because it's one thing to lie to myself. It was one thing to make my own excuses, but to also look like a dork, or just a guy you can't even approach in front of someone else who's shown they can do it, that kind of pushed me over the edge and got me to start approaching. And so this group is going to help facilitate that for you, because you could get lucky and meet someone in line or whatever, but it's not that likely to happen. So I highly recommend joining that group and make sure to add yourself to the map, to add your city and yourself to the map, because then other people will be able to hit you up as they join as the group grows, because it's coming on 500 members soon, and I've barely promoted it, and now I'm going to start promoting it a lot, and it's going to grow rapidly, and there will be in every major city a number of people to meet over the next weeks and months, and there already may be people you can meet now. So I highly recommend joining that. I'll put the link in the description, post it in the chat one more time. I wish you could drop a program with more infield. That is kind of one of the things I'm going to be working on while I do this whole monk mode thing. Going out has become a job, and it's something that I have been doing on my own on the off days. That's why I've been in Vegas so much, because it's somewhere where you can go out Monday, Tuesday. But boot camps took so much time, and perhaps more importantly, so much energy, that I basically wasn't, things like getting infield, things like working on building new courses. It just was very difficult to maintain all that, right? And so that's something I'm going to be working on. There's these Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses that have a pretty high quality camera, pretty good audio. And I bought those so that I can go around, get infield on my own. And then I'll also be getting infield with cameramen. So that's something I will be working on for the channel, and certainly for courses as well. Give me an opener to try tonight. A classic one that I'd say is just a little bit of a better version of the "Hey, I thought you were cute and I had to say hi," is to instead say, "Hey, I saw you walking by, whatever, and I would have regretted it if I didn't at least introduce myself." Right? And so that's just a little bit more, I don't know, you could say romantic, or a little bit more unique. It stands out a little bit more. It's not quite as generic sounding, and it adds more emotion as opposed to just "you're pretty," right? It's also, there's like, it took courage to do this. And I'm doing it anyway, right? It implies that. So that's one you can try. All right. So I'm looking for, yeah, no problem. And I'm glad that, at least someone is going out, because I saw Chris Williamson, great podcaster who has, a lot of really interesting guests, and definitely someone worth watching. He posted on, I believe it was X, but really I still call it Twitter, because who the fuck wants to call it X? Such a bad name. But anyway, he posted something that said, let me see if I can get the exact stat. Men haven't approached women. I think it was 45%. Yeah, he said, I see, 55% of single 18 to 30 men say they haven't approached a single woman in the last year. Now, think about how crazy that is, right? You're single. And look, if some of those guys are, maybe they're getting a ton of matches, or, they meet a ton of girls from their social circle, but we know most of them don't, because there's another stat that is very correlated with this, that it's about 30, I think I want to get the exact number, but it's something like 30% of single men in almost the same age group haven't had sex in the last year. So think about how those are just so connected, right? And that number has drastically increased since social media, and since high-speed internet has made prawn extremely popular. OnlyFans, like men have these other options to just stay inside, not go out, not take a social risk. And it's easy to do. I get it. I've been in that derp state myself. I understand the resistance. I understand how appealing it is to be like, in high school, I played a shit ton, like 8 hours a day of World of Warcraft or Halo 3. And that's a semblance of a social life, right? It's not a real social life, but it's like empty carbs. It's enough. It doesn't actually nourish you. It doesn't get you what you actually want, but it's better than nothing. And so we live in a society where it's much easier to do that, where you have infinite options to just look at half-naked women on TikTok and to just jack off every day, and to live a lifestyle where your testosterone goes down and eventually you don't even have a desire to meet women. But the fact that 55% of men who are single haven't approached a single woman, and about half that many haven't had sex in the last year, very correlated. And you know what the funny part is? If you divide that 30% of men who haven't had sex in the last year, you have to add in the fact that about half of men are in a relationship. So you can roughly, when you consider that, you can double the men who are single who haven't had sex in the last year is probably about 60%. So isn't it funny how beautifully that works out, that about 60% of men haven't had sex in the last year, and it's a similar number, 55% haven't approached a single woman in the last year. There's a correlation. And it's not just literally the fact that they're able to approach and they took a shot. It's also, being someone who's willing to take a risk, who's willing to put in the effort, who's, not just making excuses. And I believe the other part of that stat, yes, and it looks like between 60 and 70%, or I think it was 60% of the men that did approach at least got a date. So the success rate is actually very high of people who actually approached. And that's just at least doing one, right? And many of them only did a handful, 10, 20, 30, whatever. And yet they're having success. And that's not to say online dating doesn't work. It absolutely can. If you get good enough pictures, 95% of you will have garbage pictures that will not work and will not lead to results. But once you get good pictures, you absolutely can have success on dating apps too. But if you're part of that 55%, don't complain, don't whine, don't be a victim. The only thing you're a victim to is your own excuses, right? Because you're among the majority of men who aren't even really trying. So I think that stat is very illuminating. I think it shows us a lot about the psychology of modern men, about how we're just kind of in a derp state as a society, right? And it's getting the things that give us so much entertainment and so much distraction and let us avoid our stress and basically, get into what's it called? It's not called avoidance, escapism, right? All these things that allow us to escape real life more and more, well, they cause us to actually escape living life, right? When you're constantly engaged with escapism, things like prawn, things like, watching videos all day, watching Netflix all day, using OnlyFans, things of that nature, the more you're doing that, the less you should be surprised that your real life isn't getting the results you want. And so that is the default now. That is where the gravity is pushing us towards. That's the natural thing to do. But when you look at the results, not getting laid in an entire year, that's kind of fucking sad, right? Unless you're a monk or it's for religious reasons, it's kind of depressing. It's really sad. So that's something to really consider. And the best thing you can do right now to fight against that is join my free mastermind group, where you can add yourself to the Wingman Locator and find other guys to go out with and find a community of people who are going to push you to take action. You're going to see success stories and you're going to be inundated with a positive culture where basically there's the quote we all know, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, right now, most of those guys probably are settling for a girl they don't really like, or they're among that 55% who haven't approached, or they're among that 60% who haven't got laid in the last year. And it's going to have a gravitational pull to make it easier to make excuses. But if you join this group, you're going to have a pull in the opposite direction where you're in a different culture and you're basically changing the formula of those people that you're spending the most time with. So click the link below to make sure to join that. Now, see a bunch of questions. So how do I not run out of how much do you go out and how much do you approach is the first thing, because it's a skill, just like doing improv comedy, where when there's a lot of pressure internally, when you feel very stressed about approaching, that's what makes it hard to think of things to say. Because, if you're with close friends, family, people you're very comfortable with, I'm sure there are instances where you can just talk and talk and talk without any issues. But unless, you're an edge case, right? A rare exception. But when there's pressure and you feel like you need to perform, that's when it becomes difficult. So it can be useful to have a few canned things to say, basically, that you can use as a backup with every girl you approach. Some of them can be very basic, right? Like, where are you from? What do you do? That kind of thing. And then you can add a couple that are maybe a little more interesting or unusual. So you can just come up with a list, put it on your notes, and just memorize that of like 5 questions just to always be able to ask. But for the most part, game is about the ability It's about having $1 million mouthpiece, right? If you run a script, there's so many different things she could say, so many different ways she could react that the script is going to run out. And if you're used to using a script, it's like you have to shift gears from, oh, I have this script to rely on, and now I have to do it completely on my own. And you're going to, most likely, you're just going to fizzle out at that point. So it's better to just go all in, have the bare minimum crutches of just a few things memorized, and then develop that skill. And one principle you can be aware of is, first of all, come up with some answers to basic questions that are a little bit ironic or funny, right? When she asks what you do, you can just give a fake answer, right? You can say you do OnlyFans. You can say that you raise cats, something that's just intentionally a little unusual and off, just to not make it so serious and so, what do you call, logical, interview mode, right? To avoid it being too interview mode. That's definitely useful. But for the most part, you want to just throw yourself in and try to push the interactions farther and farther. And over time, you're going to develop that skill set because you have to start rising to the occasion. It might be hard and awkward at first. It was for me, trust me. But over time, you'll just get comfortable with approaching, and you'll get more references that it's not a big deal. It's not so, it's not the end of the world. And then as the pressure goes down, your ability to just think of things to say on the spot will get better. And the best interactions are always going to be that, right? Like they're going to be organic, where you're building off what she says, she builds off what you say. All right, so I am going to, because it's hot as fuck, I'm going to get a towel and get some water. I'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, sorry about that. Retention. So assume you're meaning girls that you've already slept with. The There's a few answers. One is, if she felt like it was just a hookup, a meaningless hookup, and there was no intimacy connection between you two, like you didn't talk about anything unusual or unique. Basically, it was surface level, and it was like a physical attraction, but there wasn't any. You didn't talk about anything that she's going to replay in her mind again and again after the interaction. And that's what you want to start leaning towards, right? Is having a conversation that is memorable and where you talk about things that are more vulnerable, or about topics like spirituality, philosophy, psychology, your ambitions, your goals, things like that, and hers as well. And you want there to be a sense of intimacy, that it's about more than purely just sex. The second thing is just how good the sex actually is. Um, and that's something I can't really go over in a live stream because it'll get, like deranked or whatever. But I would recommend, there's ways you can find these, but there's something called, I don't know if I can even say, I guess I can say the title, Sex God Method, the book, very useful. And then the other one is Squirting Mastery, which is an online course with videos that show how you can make that happen, and they show it actually happening, if you will. So a very legit online course, and there's ways you can find that, but they're not even for sale, so you have to find it on the internet. So I would say that's basically the bit, is like, how good is the sex, right? Like how does it compare to every other one night stand or guy she's hooked up with? And if it's far better, then chances are she's going to want to see you again, right? That's the other half. And so my general recommendation is just, give a lot, right? Don't be just someone who's just like trying to get it in as fast as possible. And the less you ignore, the more you utilize foreplay, generally the better. And you got to just keep in mind that women's, arousal and the way that they, climax is very different from you, and you're pretty much guaranteed, like, the more you give her pleasure, you're going to get that in reciprocally, right? You're just going to feel like the man more in a way, right? Because she enjoyed it more, and she's also going to want to return the favor, if you will. So that's the number one thing a lot of guys tend to get wrong. Basically, you just go up to her, and you can either, I mean, one thing you can do is some kind of dance move, or it can be goofy, it can be serious, whatever, and try to make eye contact and just, who are you, right? Or just slowly go into dance with her. Um, and yeah, if you can get her to dance with you, you can even sometimes, hey, want to dance? And you just do that. And as long as you come across confident, you're smiling, good energy, a good percentage of women will say sure. And then you just want to make sure you move it off the dance floor instead of dancing with her for like 10 minutes, because that'll get boring. So I don't know, Rivellino, is he that weirdo on, not to be mean, but is he that weird guy on Twitter that posts like the little diagrams of like the cock confidence? Like, that stuff is so cringe. I don't see that as a guy who actually pulls. But is leaning in unmasculine, and is it a mistake? Generally speaking, yeah, that's true. So you want basically to just get in closer while being straight, right? Not as opposed to gay, but just holding yourself without leaning in, start calling yourself out on that habit. And then secondly, you want to basically, you can pull her in to you, right? If you can't hear her, right? Be like this. Um, well, first of all, are you sure it came from a Twitter survey? And second of all, why would that not be accurate to general society? Like, I know, surveys are not perfectly accurate, but what would the difference be between, like, if it was a PUA asking it, right? If I asked it, it would be biased, and you'd probably get a higher percentage of men who approached, or I hope you would. But Chris Williamson is not. He's just a general men's self-improvement guy. So I don't see why it would be vastly different from the general population. I disagree. Most of the red pill guys have not gotten laid tons. Most of them have had bad experiences with women, and they have basically turned that into an ideology, right? They've seen this other people in the red pill, they resonated with it, they got made really good posts, became popular, and then they started sharing their message. But it mostly is not guys. I can't think of a red pill guy who has like really good receipts, or who has any kind of infield or any evidence that they get attractive women ever at all. The one exception would be Andrew Tate, but he's, in a case for sex trafficking. So depending on how that goes, I wouldn't necessarily use him as a good example, or him and his brother as a good example either, right? Rollo Tomasi, nothing impressive. Who else in terms of the red pill, in terms of showing results? Uh, everyone. I mean, who's the one that's fucking embarrassing? Donovan Sharp. He's shown his wife and called her body like an 8 or a 9. She looks to be in her late 40s, if not 50s. Was a single mother, which is something he said not to go for, and is just like below average looks wise, clearly. So I've never seen an example of a red pill guy who practices what he preaches. Now, having these like interviews with the table with attractive women. Most of them I don't think are actually hot on whatever or Fresh and Fit. Um, I think it's shocking actually that a lot of those women have OnlyFans and make money from it. Like, men are fucking either blind or desperate or something, because they're paying women I wouldn't even approach, a lot of them, right? Like, I wouldn't be interested. I'd never hook up with, just based on physical appearance alone. And then it's worse once they start talking, most of the time. So it's crazy people pay for that. Kind of sad in terms of men that they do. But, even those guys, they don't show any expertise with women themselves, right? They're just talking about things that resonate because most guys, as I've talked about earlier, most men are not approaching women. Most men don't have good photos for the dating apps. Most men are not building a social circle either, where they can facilitate to have women in it that they can meet. Since they're not doing any of those things, what's going to resonate more? Something like me, who's saying, well, you're kind of fucking up actually, and you need to start taking action. You need to face your ego. You need to stop making excuses, and you need to admit you've been making mistakes, that your mindsets are wrong in a lot of cases, and that you need to change. That is a lot of cognitive dissonance, and some people can embrace that, right? Some people have a growth mindset where they're like, that makes a lot of sense. But a lot more people, unfortunately, have a victim mentality or a static mindset where they see red pill guys talking about how it's hopeless. Why, even like Rollo Tomasi said, unless you're an 8 out of 10 looks wise, I don't know the exact quote, but he said something about unless you're really good looking, you shouldn't even approach, right? That's going to resonate because it tells you that you are a victim. It reinforces something that makes it so you get to, one, feel a certain dopamine hit about, oh, it's not my fault. And secondly, it allows you to avoid doing hard things and to continue to stay the same or even get worse and feel good about doing so. So that's my thoughts on red pill in general. Now, there's some of the creators are better than others. I don't think they're all terrible, but as a general rule of thumb, and funny enough, I used to be one of the most popular posters on the Reddit until I got banned eventually. But I was one of the most popular posters on the Reddit, which had like a million, whatever, it had millions of people on it. And, it's something I'm very familiar with, but I don't subscribe to so many of the beliefs, and focusing on how women are terrible. All women are like that. The cock carousel, beta bucks, alpha, like there's some degree of truth to all of these things. None of them are 100% true. And when you focus on them, you're going to see the world through a lens that makes it feel like it's not even worth trying because all these women are terrible. And even if you do meet a nice girl and you're thinking about how she's going to screw you over, she's going to like take half your money in divorce, she's going to cheat on you, guess what? You're going to start acting paranoid and weird around her, and you're going to make it more likely that those things end up happening. So that's the issue with the red pill in a nutshell. Could certainly go on a whole long ass rant about that, and I may. Good opener. You're at a bar in a restaurant. The one I said earlier in the stream is fine. Right? You can just talk to the one that you're more interested in. You can also address them both, but in some cases, actually better to address them both. It depends on whether they're both equally attractive or whether one's clearly way better looking than the other. If one is clearly way better looking than the other, you don't want to ignore or basically make the other girl feel jealous and dislike you. So you basically say, hey, I saw you guys and I would have regretted it if I didn't at least introduce myself. Very easy, basic, backup opener to have. I'm not saying it's the best opener. The best opener is always going to be something that comes to your mind organically, something that comes to, just like any good joke. Any good joke you come up with, it's not like you pre-planned it and thought about it, unless you're writing like jokes for popsicle sticks or something, right? It's going to be something that just came to your mind organically, right? If I try to tell you, make me laugh, come up with a funny joke, good luck. You're not going to be able to do it. Same thing with an opener. You can't just force yourself to formulate something. But whenever you're in a, just a good social state, you've been approaching, you'll start doing this more and more, where you don't need to say the same thing every time. Whatever comes to your mind will probably be when the best, right? When something comes to your mind naturally, you just want to have a backup opener or several backup openers to say when that doesn't happen, because it won't always happen. Um, so there's merit, strengths, and weaknesses to both. Mystery really focuses a lot on uh, groups with guys in them. So if a group has a guy in them, you can still go direct, but there's definitely, the risk that the guys will be some degree of antagonistic towards you, or they're not going to be on your team right away. Whereas if you do something like an opinion opener and you're not approaching with so much intent, you can kind of weasel your way in there. It's not the best way to put it, but you get what I'm saying, right? So there's definitely times where that has its uses. It's not necessarily required. But if you're approaching a girl like who's by herself or only in a group of girls, uh, approaching in that sly way will work if you're someone like Mystery, where he's very gregarious, he's very outgoing, very charismatic. And so he was basically teaching what worked for him because of his personality and his level of confidence already being high. But if you're new and you don't know how to show intent, or you just, your ego gets in the way and you make excuses, and that's something you have an anxiety about, like really putting yourself out there, putting your balls like on the chopping block, just like really approaching in a way that has intent, where you could genuinely get rejected as opposed to half-assing it and putting on a mask. Well, that's most guys. And so it's important to first be able to approach with intent to get that, basically that monkey off your back. And then if you wanted, you could go more in that direction. I've been in a 4-year relationship actually. Um, so yeah, I've been in several shorter ones, 6 months, 3 months. Moving on from a relationship. I'd say the end of the relationship can be a good motivation to level up, right? To improve, things like your business, to improve your habits, etc. Use that as fire. The pain, instead of seeing it as depression, see it as like frustration, right? And you don't want to get too like negative and be like, I'm going to get revenge on her, but just to some degree, use that as fuel is the best thing, and then make sure that you are you don't need to like get laid immediately after. I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily ideal or necessary, but make sure that you are talking to other women, approaching other women, and not just like, you know because then you're not going to be replaying, you're going to get crushes on other girls instead of just replaying this like victim you know narrative that you have, and just thinking about her and how sad it is that you broke up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's one I've definitely used. Doing something embarrassing. Um, Try to think of an example. Um, like approaching just like with a robotic tone for no reason, like at hello, nice to meet you. Just something weird, right? Something out there. Not something I would say do again and again, but just to get out of serious, try hard. I need to be James Bond. I need to look cool. And this is a guy who has had a lot of success from Cold Approach, who's leaving this comment. So definitely his advice is worth listening to. Um, yeah, well, how do you develop confidence? If you want to learn, let's say drums, I play drums. Um, at first, you have no confidence in your ability to play any song because you can't. And when you try, it's kind of embarrassing, kind of awkward, right? But the only way to get confidence is to try doing that, fail, but get a little better, right? To make some progress and to realize the failure isn't a big deal, and they get comfortable with failing. And once that becomes, you realize, oh, failure is attached to progress and success, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to fail, so I shouldn't do it, which is the mindset you have now. That's how you get out of your own way and stop preventing yourself from making progress. And thank you. Yes, definitely smash the like, especially if you want me to keep doing these live streams. My plan while I'm doing this monk mode thing is I'm going to be posting a video every day. That's the goal, at least. We'll see how it goes. But it's to, if not a live stream, at least post a new video every single day on YouTube. And I'm going to be focusing on, I'm doing a new diet that I got from Andrew Huberman. If you're curious, the diet is very simple. Andrew Huberman's a neuroscientist who has a very popular podcast. If you don't know, definitely recommend. But the diet is basically just only no carbs except for in the form of vegetables or fruit. And then other than that, you can eat any meat. You can eat nuts. You can eat eggs. And I think that's about it. Or there might be something I'm missing, but it's basically, no grains, no no what do you call it, simple carbs, and the only way you're getting carbs except for fruit, right, with that exception. And we'll see how it goes, but it's something that I'm working on, focusing on quitting bad habits. There was a period where I wasn't drinking every day, but it was more than I should. So I'm focusing on quitting that and a number of other things. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be making a lot more content, building, the channel and building my mastermind groups, these sorts of things, because I think it's important to, at some points, focus on, if everything's going in a direction that you're not happy with, it's okay to change your environment, change your routines, and focus on different things. This doesn't mean that, like, for me, does it mean I'm not going to be approaching women or not be going on dates? No, I still will. And if you're going to do monk mode, it doesn't mean to me that you just quit approaching. It's just I'm going to do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then use dating apps the rest of the week, right? And so still, be going on a couple dates a week, hopefully, but not fixating on that as the number one most important thing, right? Focusing more on other things. Yeah. Look, the thing is, we are sponges, and if you consume, like, we like to think that we're completely autonomous, but we absorb the messages that we keep hearing. And if you keep being hearing that, if you're not good looking enough, it's hopeless, give up, it's all about looks. If you just keep hearing that again and again, you're going to start believing it to some degree. And same thing with Red Pill. If you believe it's all about status and that game is only a small part of the puzzle and it's not enough, and all these things that you'll hear from, like Fresh and Fit or whatever, it's whether or not you fully agree as you listen, you're going to just start moving a little bit in that direction. And so if a message is not moving you towards the results you want to cut that out, right? You want to be aware that that's not going to help you. You're going to absorb it, and you need to just block that out. I had a guy in my free mastermind group who made a post about how, I'm looking at it right now. He made a post about, and tons of people joining. Cool. And the link is in the description below if you want to learn more about that. But this guy, what he was doing, he posted how if you're not, a cold approach is a waste of time if you're unattractive. Funny enough, this guy is clearly pretty good looking based on his profile picture. If you join the group, you can find the post and judge for yourself. But I asked him, and he said, in my city, it doesn't really work, or in my country, cold approach doesn't work. And he said that, cold approach is pointless because he's not good looking enough, right? So I asked him two questions. First of all, which country are you in? And secondly, how many approaches have you done to decide that you're not good looking enough to make it work, right? So how much data did you get before you came to this decision, this belief, and you were like, realized, okay, now I know the truth, that it's just not, and let me spread that belief to everyone else, right? And he says Portugal is the country. European countries there's nothing hard about European countries. That's ridiculous. So first of all, I already know that part's not true. There's, some are more traditional than others, and you might have to go on more dates, but Portugal, doubt that. I'm 99% certain that that's bullshit. It's just the grass is always greener on the other side. We always think our country, our city, unless you're in country that practices Sharia law or something like that, your country isn't some special exception, some special case. And certain parts of India will also be more difficult too, but that's about it, because of their culture. But anywhere in South America, I mean, Africa, Europe, anywhere in North America, I don't know if there's anything I'm missing. I mean, Australia, I know that's fine. New Zealand is actually like super easy mode. They have the highest average amount of sexual partners in the world, them and Turkey, fun fact. But anywhere other than those two somewhat exceptions, you can make it work. And somewhere like China, day game might be harder, but you can still do night game and online game. Anyway, so I already know that's bullshit. And here's the crazy part, though. Oh, I did maybe 4 or 5, but never got any positive reactions. And like, I knew this because I've asked this question to everyone who says this kind of thing. And it's almost always the answer. And it's like, I don't want to be mean about it, but we just have such a low standard for how we decide what's possible. It's so easy for us to fool ourselves into making excuses into being a victim. Like, how do you decide it's not possible and you need to have a victim mentality from barely dipping your feet in the water, right? 4 or 5 approaches. If you're to put that to any other skill, anything else that you can practice and, improve at and get better results at, that's the equivalent of like one session, right? So that's like playing guitar for 30 minutes or going to the gym one time. And you go to the gym one time, you realize you're not in better shape. And you say, oh, the gym is impossible. That's literally the same fucking thing. The gym doesn't work. I tried. That's the same level of thinking, right? The same level of critical thinking to come to that conclusion. And that's something you need to be aware of, because maybe it's not so blatant with you, but it's something that is extremely common, where guys decide it's not going to work with them when they haven't even tried. And you have to, level up beyond that and get over your ego and admit, well, I haven't tried because it's hard, because I have approach anxiety, I have resistance, my ego doesn't want me to do it, whatever excuses, but I don't know shit. Now, I see evidence on channels like my channel, that it can work, from testimonials from infield, or, there's plenty of you. If you think, well, he's white and he's, above average height, he has blue eyes, so therefore, of course, it's easy for him. There's plenty of coaches like Justin Mark, 5'4" Indian dude, who still has crushed it. I'm not his biggest fan, but he's still gotten amazing results. I'm not going to deny that. Or, guys without an attractive face, you can find plenty. Like Simple Pickup, none of them were good looking. Or one of them he was not the main guy, though. The main two, I think, Jesse, the Indian guy, and Kong, the Asian guy, certainly just average, normal looking. And there's plenty of other coaches that are below average, like Owen Cook. I'm trying to think of some really bad looking ones off the top of my head. I know there are a number. Can't think of any, but maybe I'll write in the description below if anyone wants to know. But there's plenty of other coaches who've shown infield, or even, clients of coaches where they've shown infield of themselves having success. So there's evidence. I'm not convinced necessarily from that, but why wouldn't I at least try and learn for myself, instead of, being a victim, being a total bitch, and just letting my ego and my emotions control me? Because you can do that, but like, what results has that led to so far? Not good results, or you wouldn't be watching this channel, unless you just, find me entertaining. Yeah, I kind of, from what I've seen, I would say I strongly dislike Casey Zander, because his advice is extremely toxic. It's all about how to manipulate women, which can work. Not saying it never works, but it's about how to manipulate women in a way that's going to create toxic relationships. That's basically what he should call it, right? How to manipulate women into toxic relationships where you both end up hating each other. That's the overall idea. A lot of the specific advice he gives is terrible. I remember he said something about not having a positive mood around women. Oh, no, you don't want to think she likes you, because if you think she likes you, you're going to act. Maybe I could find the short. I think it's actually, I have an app that blocks. Yeah, YouTube is blocked, so I can't put it up right now. But he had a short where he said, it's better to assume she's going to reject you, because then you're going to have more of an edge, and then you're going to be more disagreeable. And that's like some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like, really? Like, really, that's your advice? Don't assume she's going to like you, because if you assume she's not going to like you, you're probably not going to make a move. You're probably not going to hold strong eye contact. You're probably not going to be willing to tease her because you think it's going to go badly, right? You're not going to be fully authentic. You're going to be tense. It's like the worst advice. You want to believe that she's going to like you. You want to assume attraction until, you get evidence, proof of the contrary, because then you're going to act the way you would act with a girl that you're already sleeping with, right? Which is obviously much better than acting like a girl that has friend zoned, like you would with a girl who's friend zoned you. So he gives tons of bad advice of the videos I've seen of his. And then he doesn't really give any practical tips, like practical other than weird things like that. He doesn't focus on like how many approaches you should be doing. It's stuff that's tangible and leads to real results. He gives like this vague mindset stuff that's like, oh, that's cool. I'll use this evil tool, this dark wizardry, this Sith, trick to manipulate women. And it's very like good on the ego. It's exciting, but I looked for his testimonials, couldn't find any. He doesn't have any infield or evidence of his own results. And yeah, he just seems very scammy to me. So that's my opinion on him. Okay. And I'm going to answer a few more questions. I'm about to wrap this up, but um, chances are I'm going to be doing this again tomorrow. Just say, hey, sorry to interrupt. And it's not most, some, but if they're in a social environment, especially, I mean, even if they're not, but if they're in a social environment like a bar, the point is to socialize, right? So most women are not going to be like super offended. Now, if they're extremely engaged, you can kind of tell the vibe that like these people don't want anyone else to talk to them. And then it's more likely that they might act that way. But even then, is it really a big deal if you just say one line? Because metaphorically, just imagine you're having a really deep, amazing conversation with your friend, most engaging conversation you've ever had, super important, and you don't want anyone around, but then your perfect 10, like your dream girl, like for me, I'd say like Ana de Armas kind of archetype. You see her, she comes in, is like, oh, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I just had to say that there's something about you that really caught my attention, and I would have regretted it if I didn't at least introduce myself. Are you going to be pissed? No, you're going to be extremely grateful. Um, and it's going to facilitate an opportunity where that could end up being the mother of your children, right? Like you never know what might happen. Now, worst case, you'd be like, oh, sorry, we're really engaged in the conversation. If it's a girl you're not into, like, it's Amy Schumer, let's say, does that approach. You're like, oh, thank you, very flattering, but I can't. Worst that could happen, right? And as long as she leaves after that, it's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to upset you. If anything, it's a nice like dopamine hit, right? So you're saying how should you develop your inner game? I'm thinking of doing a talk specifically about inner game because it's a very misunderstood thing, or part of game. But I would say if you want to develop your inner game as fast as possible, it's really doing things that increase your self-esteem more and doing things that reduce your self-esteem less. Right? So it's working on, one practical thing is if you're someone who plays too many video games, watches too much Netflix, things like that, download Cold Turkey for your laptop. Download, if you have an iPhone, download Opal. And then you can download on an Android. It's called Minimalist Phone, is one that these are blockers that can block those, distracting apps and block them until a certain point of the day, right? Until your day is done and you're allowing yourself to relax for a few hours at the end of the day or whatever. So I have my cold turkey set until 9 p.m. So that's one thing. And then you want to build positive habits that increase your self-esteem. And the way I'd recommend doing that is one, use a habit tracker. And these could be things like read. These could be things like practicing learning an instrument. These could be things like, going to any kind of social events, going to yoga classes, working on a side hustle, right? Building some kind of business, working on, let me try to think of some other examples. Going to the gym, if I didn't mention that, et cetera, et cetera. And put those on a habit tracker and then make a schedule. So make a schedule that's not overwhelming. Don't schedule like the whole 16 hours that you're awake right away. Leave free time, but schedule, let's say, 5 to 6 hours on a calendar and put it on repeat daily and just follow that calendar. Right. And I'll go more into this in a future video, but that's what I would recommend for increasing your inner game, because as you're doing less negative things and more positive things, right? You're doing less things that reduce your self-esteem and make you feel like, I'm a piece of shit, whatever. And you're doing more things that make you feel proud of who you're becoming. That's going to change the energy that you carry yourself with when you interact with women, and it's going to make you more attractive. Now, one of these habits should be actually approaching women, right? And meeting women, going on dates, whether it could be from online, whatever. Don't just say, I'm going to do this until, but that template is definitely very useful. Generally, unless you're only doing day game, if you're able to do night game at least some of the days, probably 50 approaches or more per week, and maybe half that if you're only able to do day game, maybe like 30. Yeah, 11 approaches a month is not cutting it. Unless you're, very good at choosing a girl who, you know, is already receptive to you, right? You're relying on choosing signals to some extent. You could make it work. Most guys who do that fail, but um, unless you're very picky with who you approach and you're just, you choose the right one, 11 approaches in a month, that's not even great for one night unless you're pulling, right? So really, it should be at least 20 a night that you get to as a, for a veteran, as you said. Yeah, no problem. And by the way, guys, I'm about to wrap up. I'm just looking if there's any like really intriguing questions. Um, Make sure to join this free mastermind group to be a part of to get off the sidelines and stop being someone who's just, consuming content, who's just watching, who's just observing, and to help just push you, give you a little extra kick in the ass, some accountability to start taking action, getting results, and to see other people, be surrounded by other people who are having success, right? Like I can give some examples quickly of one of the sections is wins I just added, but some of the wins on the group, client from last week's boot camp, he already, so this is last weekend, so this is 5 days ago, he ended up meeting one of the girls he met in Vegas on a date in his own hometown and slept with her. So that's on the group. Another example, one guy, he ended like a 6 month dry spell, and you can see these posts. You can see them actually posting it. It's not just me talking about it. Um, During our 30-day challenge, things of that nature. There's lots of posts like that. So just being around, seeing other people have successes, or just seeing a guy get the first date, there's something very powerful. And then as you contribute and start talking about how you went out and writing field reports, the people that consistently write field reports almost always get results fairly quickly. She said you should go to her house, and you gave up and left. What is wrong with going to her house? It's the same thing. Is there something I'm missing? Sounds like that's not a failure. I'm, I'm so confused. Yes, because if you go out and go to a bar, you're not going to see any average or below average guys who have girlfriends. They don't exist. Like, it's just crazy that some people actually think that. And I've never met a black pill guy. I almost said black guy accidentally, which definitely wouldn't be accurate. But I've never met a black pill guy who is like in really good shape, has a career where they make good money and they're passionate about it, and has a lifestyle where they have a social life of some kind. They have a good friend group. They go out. They I've seen the opposite, right? Just complete people who are losers in every area of their life and then are shocked that they're also losers in the area of dating. It's like, well, you got a lot of leveling up to do, but if you just want to self-victimize, go for it. But you're just going to keep going downhill, downhill, downhill. It's kind of pathetic and sad, but it's your choice. Thanks, man. Never heard of it, so I don't have an opinion. It's about 200. I don't keep exact track, and I don't even think like after a certain point, it's really about quality and like I mean, if you're just a sex addict, I guess you can just keep trying to get a higher number, but I don't really see much of a point in that. Because you want to go for girls, or at least I, at this point, want to go for girls that I want to see again, right? Or keep seeing. Just getting laid, it's like, oh, validation hit. You don't care. Unfortunately, no, I'm going to be taking a break from boot camps. I have a couple that are already scheduled. The There's one in the East Coast, but that's full, and then the rest, the last like 3 or 4 are all in Phoenix. Yeah, it'll set you free of being a winner, of improving, of liking who you are, of being proud of yourself, of getting whatever it is you want in your life. That is true. I'll go over this. I'll have a whole talk about inner game versus outer game in the near future. Yeah, definitely. You just want to have an abundance of options, right? You don't have to sleep with a bunch of women, but you do need to get to a point where you have the sense, the genuine belief, knowing that you have a lot of options, right? And then you can choose from those options. The best one for cold approach I found is generally Bungalow in Santa Monica, but there's a lot. Yep, tons. It's ironic, but Indian accent, it depends how thick it is. If it's super thick and you're actually hard to understand, you wanna work on talking slower and, you know, get it to a point where it's not super thick, but beyond that, it's fine. I don't know why he keeps posting the same video again and again and again, and it's, like, constantly on repeat. I don't understand that, or the same 4 videos or whatever, and now, he's getting, like, less views than I do, even though he has a much bigger subscriber count. So his marketing strategy or his YouTube strategy makes no fucking sense to me. I don't know how he is as a coach, but his infield that I've seen is definitely good. Verbally, it might not be the best, but it shows other things that a lot of guys neglect. Basically, the vibe that you want to have of strong intent and being able to have fun and not letting nervousness get in your way. So his game seems really good. Um, his his coaching and his channel, I don't know. Well, 13 years in the game. I started when I was 21, and I'm 12. I had a 4-year relationship, so you have to take those out, and another combined about a year, so 5 years of relationships. Um, and then the first year, I got no results really, like 2 or 3 pulls, and then it was an exponential curve. So yeah, I don't think there's anything unusual about that. Super good, but his pickup advice has a element of being super toxic to it as well. So yes, very effective, but it's going to attract a certain kind of women when you're absorbing his mindsets and his style. There's a lot of good things, but you have to be aware that there's certain parts that are just like, there's one video where he talked about how after a girl left his place and walked through the field, he lived in Switzerland, and walked through the field back to the train, and was like all, in the walk of shame, mess up hair or whatever. He would, and this, you're probably gonna laugh and think it's cool, but it's also like not healthy. So he would get his bowl of cereal, start eating, and he'd have a pair of binoculars ready, and he'd just like look at her and smile and be like, ah, it is complete, and just enjoy the fact that's just one of many examples, but he's definitely got some, his pickup advice has, you got to be careful not to take that stuff to heart. Bro, 5'8" is it's in the average range. It's an inch below average. So why would it matter? It's not, you don't have an advantage being 5'8". But it's not a significant disadvantage. I know plenty of guys much shorter. Look up Justin Mark, 5'4", who have success. All right. It was great talking to you guys. Hope you enjoyed this live stream. Number one thing I would recommend if you want to get the most value from my content as possible, or it's really not content, it's being a part of the community, is to join the free group that I've linked below in the description. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.